I think it's a global issue with our technology, the adoption, and I think but there is like a social part of the problems that we can solve within Web3, not only communities but just specifically for the technology. And for example, have you seen like a very good use cases like startups in Africa that we probably will come across soon, or we already know, or it's kind of too early?
Yeah, I think there are some companies that are already doing some very interesting things. We have South Africa, for example. So South Africa is doing this thing where they let you essentially verify land ownership, right? So if you want to buy a land, for example, in Nigeria, you can go to their platform and they can tell you, hey, this land belongs to the government or this land belongs to an individual, right? So you can kind of validate that whoever is trying to sell this land to you actually has the rights to sell the land, right? And they're also digitizing all of that as well. So they're putting some of these lands they're mapping them out and putting them on the chain.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's a very interesting application. And then there's also a company in Cameroon called Ejara. And what they are doing, this is actually built on Tezos. And what they are doing is they are fractionalizing shares, right? So if you wanted to invest, for example, and you can afford to buy, for example, maybe in a government bond, right? And you cannot afford to buy a large chunk of it, you can actually invest in fractional shares of the larger share that they've bought or of the government bond that they've bought, right? And all of that is being done on the Tezos blockchain. So I think that that's also very interesting as well. I think like those are two of like some of the very, very interesting use cases I've seen for using Web3 on the continent at the moment.
Wow, but this is very progressive.
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah, and then there's also one called Check It. So what they do is for drugs. So essentially, you can use that to verify because in some countries, in some developing countries, right, you have cases where people are selling fake drugs, right, fake medical drugs, right, and you need a way for people to be able to scan a code and to verify that this drug is straight from the manufacturer, it's approved, it has been well regulated, and that's kind of one of the problems that they are also solving as well. So just ensuring that the quality of food, the quality of drugs are being maintained, and that data is being stored on the chain so that people can easily get access to that information to verify that yes, this is a drug that I can consume. Yeah.
Wow. This is like very fascinating, and I feel like that sort of adoption we need more and more.
Yeah. Use cases.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay, so let's dig a little bit into the developer community.
Okay.
Because obviously those brilliant use cases and more startups are built by the communities of developers. Yeah. What is the vibe in Africa? Is there like big community already, or it's just like small communities teaching and sharing the skills?
Yeah, I think there are a number of communities that are trying to get people to adopt the blockchain, and they're also doing Web3 education as well. So I know before I came in August, there was a conference for about 2,000 developers by a group called BNUG, so Blockchain Nigeria User Group, and their kind of vision is how do we get more people to build on the blockchain or to build in Web3. There's also Web3 Bridge as well. So there are quite a number of developer programs, Web3 developer programs on the continent right now. And I think they're being done really well. They're training developers, like people who may have never written Web2 code before, for example. You can basically come into their program, learn to build on the blockchain, and essentially become a blockchain engineer. I think it's going pretty well. I think they definitely need more funding. But I think that it's something that will continue to grow into the future.
Okay, so education and development skills. Let's say, what is like the level of access? You mentioned like for women, but like in general, like you mentioned also that there are better developed countries and let's say with like less funding and less possibilities. What is like overall level of access to education and skill development?
I think so there are public schools that are obviously free, but sometimes the quality of education that you get may not be the best, also because of a lack of funding as well. And so a lot of private schools are there's a lot of competition between private schools now, right? Trying to offer more in terms of we want children to be more technically gifted, more technically sound. So they're offering like some computer science courses that you can also take while you are going to, say, primary school or secondary school. But I think that for us to improve access, we need to be able to fund these kids more, right? So we want more kids to go to the private schools while we're also trying to, get funding for the public schools as well. And so for me, there's a charity back in Nigeria that I give to help to keep kids in school and to get them into private schools where they can learn even more technical skills, right? And I think that's the way we need to, apart from, of course, we need to improve the educational system itself. And I think that to do that, there has to be a lot of policy changes. And then there also has to be a lot of funding alongside it as well, right? So I think, of course, the easiest thing that we can do right now is to try to look at charities who are trying to keep kids in this kind of schools, trying to put kids in this kind of schools that have like a technical direction, right? And fund those kind of charities in the meantime, while we're trying to maybe lobby government, lobby institutions, lobby organizations to say, hey, we need to improve the curriculum in these schools. And we also need to make them more accessible. But I think the first step is kind of from what I can do right now, what you can do right now, what anybody can do right now, is to try to get kids who may not have access to these schools, right? To try to fund them and get them into these schools who are already on that path to creating people who are, kids that are technically sound.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds challenging, but it can be done.
Yeah, I mean, we have to do challenging things to move society forward. So yeah, I really believe that if we don't try, no one is going to do it, right? Yeah. So if we're passionate about it, we should try to put our strength into it as well.
Yeah, I think you're in the right place, and me as well.